talk a little bit about the Baltimore Orioles. Much different scenario than the Yankees, just because, this is a team that's not supposed to be any good. This is a team that's consistently in last place. They sell at the deadline. And what do you know? They're still in the mix. It's a Cinderella story for the Orioles so far this year. And before we got on, Maddox and I were just kind of looking at everyone's numbers, just like no one's really that good. They have a great bullpen. Their lineup it's not bad. I wouldn't say it's bad because it's pretty consistently And but no one is standing out. No one has over an 800 OPS. Now the big thing that has changed is since Adley Rutschman came to this team, they have been dramatically better. And even though they sell, they trade Trey Mancini at the deadline, they've still been good. And they're only a couple games back from the wild card spot right now. I believe it's like 3 or 4, I want to say. So not too far back from the wild card spot. But do you guys think there's any chance that they actually make the playoffs?
Let Maddox go first.
It'll kind of just depend. The AL is looking kind of weird right now. They would have to catch the Blue Jays, only about 2 games back. I'll have to look and see how often they play the Blue Jays over the next month. But something to look out for is the Orioles at home. At home this year, they're 37-24. Versus on the road, they're 31-37. It's all just going to depend on can they play better on the road throughout this final stretch. And then, just their road slumps makes me really question if they do make the playoffs, how far they can make it, because they will be making it as a wild card team, and they will be making it by playing that first round on the road, majority of those games. Can they even win a series if they make it? I highly doubt it. They just don't have the star power to contend with even, I don't even think the Guardians. We'll just have to see. I would say no on playoffs for now. The real highlight of this team is its bullpen, but it's kind of lacking in the starting pitching department. Do you have a guy that you can throw out on the mound that can win you a game in the playoffs? And they just don't have that, in my opinion. I'm going to say no on the playoffs. And if they do make the playoffs, I highly doubt they win that first round.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say no playoffs. But first off, yeah, we'll talk about like the makeup of the roster. They are incredibly average. That is the best way I can describe them. That is how they win games. It's the fact that they are so average that they just consistently perform exactly the same every single game. And by sheer luck, they just win baseball games. It doesn't make any sense. You don't look at this team and be like, oh, there's the star performer. Like, yeah, like Adley is pretty good for a catcher. And, Anthony Santander's okay for an outfielder. But, like, it's just the fact that everyone's kind of like a 700 to 800 OPS hitter. And all the pitchers in the rotation have like a 4.2 ERA. To where like they're just so incredibly average that they somehow manage to formulate wins out of that. But looking at this team going forward, that's more what I want to talk about, not necessarily, if they can make the playoffs or how they're going to do, if they even make them, because, their starting pitching is terrible. Even if you look at, past the ERA, they give up a lot of hits, don't strike a lot of guys out. But I'm really impressed with how they've built this roster. They've developed some good pitchers that I think that even if they're not performing that well right now, I think Dean Kramer and Tyler Wells have futures in the middle to bottom of their big league rotation. John Means is out, obviously, which makes this even more incredible. But, he's going to come back in the future. He's a very, very solid number 3. They got Grayson Rodriguez and DL Hall, who have been phenomenal in their farm system, have great stuff, and they could easily be up there in the rotation. And the way they develop relief pitching is unbelievable. They traded Jorge Lopez to the Twins, and he was their closer. In hindsight, that probably wasn't a great move for them long term. But even then, Felix Bautista just steps in and takes over. And, he's pumping 101 with a great splitter. Cionel Perez has been great this year. Dylan Tate's been great this year. And I feel like that's a really, really good recipe for continued success for this team. They just got to keep taking chances on guys. They have a formula in place where they have been able to develop and really fix guys that come over from other organizations and turn them into good arms in the bullpen. So I just keep leaning on that. Get Colton Hauser up, or shit, I can't even remember his name. They just brought up Gunnar Henderson. They have Adley Rushman up. Just build that core. Don't be too aggressive yet. And I think you could be looking at a really, really good team in the future. I'm just extremely impressed with how they've been able to win games with what they have now. And I think if that continues in the future and they add from within, they're going to be a really good team.
Yeah, and piggybacking on that, this year, the next 30 days, they play the Blue Jays 10 times in the next 30 days. 7 of those games are at home. So if they are going to make the playoffs, they've got to win 7 of those 10 games, I think, in order to even have a chance. But it's really tough because they do play the Yankees still. And a lot of those games are against the Yankees, Astros, Red Sox, and Blue Jays going forward. So they're going to have to beat good teams to make the playoffs. They're going to have to, play good against good teams.
Yeah, and you guys were talking about a little bit about the bullpen too. And it's funny. I was about to bring up, dude, they play the Blue Jays a bunch. Like they control their own destiny technically. They also do have some easier games. Like they play like the Nationals, the A's a few times. But anytime you're in that division, it's just you just have your work cut out for you. I didn't look at like how many home versus road games they have for the rest of their stretch, which I think you brought up the home and road splits. Like that's got to be a huge factor. Their team bullpen ERA is 4th in the league, 4th in the entire MLB. And you brought up a guy, Felix Bautista. Dude, if you guys haven't watched this guy play, I highly recommend going and watching a highlight video because he is so nasty. And really anyone that's kind of came into their bullpen, like pretty much any of their guys have pitched well. And if they or I would say have pitched at least average. And if they haven't been average, they've probably been close to elite. So it's been ridiculous how good their bullpen has been. But also like their offensive roster, I don't think they're. I mean, you brought up the starting pitching. The starting pitching numbers are not good, not really good at all, and that's why I don't think a lot of people have had faith in this team. But even their offense, their outfield's pretty solid. Austin Hayes, Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander. Now, none of those guys individually are gonna like blow you away. Like, oh wow, they have Anthony Santander, but all 3 of them pretty solid. And then they have a couple other decent pieces. Calling up Gunnar Henderson has been big. I mean, he's only played a little bit, but it could be big, I guess, down the stretch. And I brought up Rushman already. I mean, I think he's going to be one of the better catchers in the league for many years to come. Mountcastle not really having the best year, but not the worst player. Like their infield's not great, but their outfield's strong. They have some solid pieces, and they've basically just been winning off the back of their bullpen. So I also agree with you guys. I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. Now, it would be absolutely hilarious if they made the playoffs over the Blue Jays and the Red Sox. Like that would be something. That'd be one of the best storylines of the entire MLB season. But yeah, I mean they're somehow hanging in there. I don't know how long they're gonna be able to keep this up. But I think moving forward, I think they have a much better future than I think a lot of people kind of expect. I feel like you kind of when you talk about the Orioles, you kind of think of like teams like the Pirates, like teams that are not good organizations. But they have some guys that are part of their future, and it looks like they're developing the bullpen well. If they can get a decent enough starting rotation, they might be able to hang in the AL. And with the new expanded playoffs, a lot of teams that aren't that great the MLB adding a couple playoff spots, they're going to have a chance to make the playoffs. So I think that's kind of where you're looking at with this team. Is it's definitely not for this year, even if they do make the playoffs. Though that would be kind of nice for some of these younger guys, to get some experience under their belts. But I think kind of for the Orioles, it's a little bit of like, oh, they kind of shocked everyone. And if you look forward at this team, hey, like there's some positive stuff going on there. So that's probably all I have on the Orioles. But anything else you guys want to touch on?
Yeah, like you said, they kind of control their own destiny. 19 games at home, 12 on the road. So if they continue at the same pace, They could do it. I don't think it's going to happen. But like you said, it would be ironic if they did make it. A majority of their games to end the season are against the Yankees, the Astros, the Blue Jays, and the Red Sox. So those are, what's going to make it ironic is beating those teams.